Hello everyone, and welcome to another tutorial with Temperate Sage. Today I'm going to be working on an image that has taken off quite well online, and that is of my rose gown. So we're going to take this image and we're going to really lighten it up, and we're really going to do a lot of enhancements to it, cleaning up this beach, giving it a nice warm glow all across the image, making sure the face is well lit, and also working on the dress here to bring these petals over so that they overlap each other in a much nicer way. This is one of my raw images, so we're going to be starting here in the raw settings from opening. Let's go ahead and start with exposure. We're going to lighten that up a bit. Let's also enhance our contrast quite a bit. What we're trying to do is get this to an area that is still workable, but does give it a nice, soft, and bright glow. I'll leave that right there. So we've moved our exposure up and our contrast up, and we've moved our highlights down for now. I'm going to bring this up a bit so that it kind of decreases the shadows down here. Bring these whites up a little bit. Bring our blacks down. We're going to... let's leave our clarity just slightly low. We're just going to add just a little bit of softness into this image. And enhance our color quite a bit. Really get this kind of pumping with color to start. Up here, color temperatures. Let's warm it up just a tad. So, up here with our temperatures going between our blues and yellows, to start this image out, I am going to increase it just a tiny bit. And the same here, with our magentas versus greens, and these are your color shade adjusting tools in RAW. Down here we've moved our exposure up quite a bit. Might leave it right about here because we still want it to be workable. Our contrast, I'm actually going to increase that even slightly more. So our contrast is pretty darn heightened in this image in RAW. Our highlights, go ahead and leave down here. Shadows, our whites, our blacks, right about there. Clarity, I think I'm already happy with, and our vibrance, I think we're good. So these are the adjustments I have made to my image in RAW before we get started with the rest of the image. So let's go ahead and click Open Image. This right here is the finished image that I am trying to achieve with this. This is an edit I did previously, the one that has been taking off online. So let's see if we can take our RAW image right here and get that similar effect. So looking at this image, just coming out of RAW, I think one of the first things I'm going to be doing in this is a lot of cleanup in the beach, and maybe a little bit around her neck. And then also we might go ahead and do our shifts over here to get the flower petals where we want them to be. After that, we'll go ahead and do our color correction. So just following a good rule of thumb, do your retouch first and your color correction second, if you can think about doing that in that order, because it's a lot better for the long run. So let's move this image in. I'm going to click Ctrl+ to pull in on the image so we can get a nice close-up look at this debris on the beach, which we're going to start removing. There's going to be quite a bit of this, so I'll probably speed this up in post, and you guys can just pause the video and do it at your own pace now. So the first tool I'm using here is our cleanup tool, our healing brush, and I'm using it on the content aware for now. So I'm just brushing over the areas that are big and sloppy like this to just try and weed out as much of that as possible. And I'll probably end up getting as close to the dress as I can for now, but going back later and doing some very, very precise cleanup right around these edges later. And I know I get a lot of comments from people saying, oh, but beaches are so dirty and natural looking that way. Well, yes, and that's great for a lot of images where you want to keep a natural look, but with this image in particular, we're really going to be pushing it to have a very fantasy and unnatural feel. So we want to kind of get that clean landscape feeling to just kind of push more to the dress and the model herself. So it depends on the image you're doing. If you want to have a really natural, like everyday life feel, you might leave your beach dirty. But in this case, we're going to make it really slick and clean. So just trying to work and get all these big clumps. You can see our tire tracks out here and the sliding on the beach of the dress, and we'll get that cleaned up soon. Anytime you do a brush stroke that you do not like and you want to remove, just go one back and retry it. That's kind of one of the tricks with the content-aware brush tool, is you're not always going to get it perfect on the first try. So it's just kind of trial and error, finding out which way of swiping over the area is going to make the computer decide to clean it up. And I have learned a few tricks for that. Like right here, you see how I've got this piece right here up against the skin? If I click halfway in between, sometimes it does a much better job of cleaning it up than others. Look at that. It kept that line perfectly because I went right down the center. It's just these little things you find out when you use the tools a lot. There are very certain ways you can do things that will get the equation right in the program. Right down the center again, right there. That worked pretty well. I have a lot of people complain about how long these tutorials are. And I've found over time that you can make a lot of quick fixes for things. You can use sphericals for your vignettes and stuff like that, and do those quick cheater list kind of things. But in the end, if you really, really want an image that stands out, you're going to spend time with it, and you're going to put detail into your retouch. You're going to make things very unique and very painterly. And that is what's going to stand out in the photo retouch world, is if you do a painterly job with your work. So I very highly recommend that all retouchers, at least with many of your images, find time to just sit down and spend an hour even retouching an image. You'll find a big difference if you really just sit down, look at it, and take your time with it. Now, cleaning up this shadow region right here is going to be one of the more difficult parts of this image, because it's kind of a trial and error between getting it cleaned up looking, but also making sure that it's still a shadowed zone. And that's going to come more with part later in our retouch, where we are going to work on very specifically brushing over this area to really smooth out the ground. I've really been enjoying seeing all of the retouch you guys have been doing using these tutorials, and like I always say, if you guys want to send those in to me whenever I get around to doing another vlog, I will definitely show those off, because I am really proud of you guys and the awesome work you guys have been doing on your retouches. For me, these kinds of retouches are a lot of fun. They take a really long time to do, but the results can just be awesome. So we're getting kind of tight here, and I think what we're going to do pretty soon is go ahead and start with our second kind of ground retouch. Just pick up a couple more of these big thick sections and move on. So let's zoom out for a second. So Control minus to zoom out. That's getting pretty smoothed up. I think we can work with this now. So our second step on this kind of retouch on the ground back here is I'm going to go ahead and click on my brush tool. Oh, but first actually I'm going to click on my dropper tool. So if you grab your dropper tool right here, you're going to click on the ground. Now it's really important, another place you can spend time in an image is to make sure that you're dragging colors to areas where they actually exist. So say this section right here is going to be very, very different color from up here where it's a lot brighter. So when you're making the decision on where you're going to grab your color from, think about where you're also going to lay it. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some color right here. Grab that color, or actually maybe closer to right there. Grab my brush tool. Let's see what my opacity is at. Let's turn that down a bit so we can get painterly with it. So about 15%. And let's go ahead and use the bracket tools to make the brush size larger, at least for my image. I'm not sure what you guys are working on right now, either this or something else. And let's go ahead and do some brushing. So what we're doing is we're just softening these background details just a little bit, particularly along the beach, just so they just don't draw as much attention to themselves. Make it a little smaller, get in at the close of the back right here. And this is also another thing I'm going to do. I'm actually going to turn this up a little bit now. So once I am done with this, I'm going to make sure that none of this has kind of gone over and washed out the colors of the dress, because we're getting kind of close to the edges and the feathering's going to hit the dress and the model's back a bit here. So what we'll do then is go back through with the history brush and go ahead and make sure that our model has not been tampered with. So as you can see, I just brushed right along there, but that's okay. I'm kind of trying to get rid of some details right up against the edge. So what we'll just do afterwards is make sure that that is reduced. So this edge is looking pretty clean, but I want to make sure that I don't tamper with my color down here too much. So we're going to go ahead and go to this side now. Do the same thing. Maybe about here on this side. There we go. So now we're going to grab our dropper tool again. Let's go down here on this edge and grab this color for now. Make our bracket a little bigger here, and we'll just kind of brush that into this area. So here's where we're going to start kind of messing with our shadow down here a bit, as you can see, kind of brushing over it a little, and we'll go back in with the history brush on that as well, just to make sure that we're not tampering with our details too much. Brush in again. Brush in on this side again. Alright, I think, let's see, let's grab a little bit of the shadow tone down here and brush over the shadow with its own color a little bit, so we don't overly brighten it. And one more down here. Actually, let's pull that down a bit. Okay, so now we're actually going to reduce this whole look in general. So we're going to grab our history brush now, right here. And let's go up to before we brushed anything. The first thing I'm going to do now is make sure that our model has not been tampered with the brushing. So let's put that at 100%. And our hardness, let's put it about 46 for now. Just try that out. And what we're going to do is just brush over the model. I'm just being overly cautious here. Just make sure that nowhere is there extra beach color on her. So along these edges, clean up this little frond right here. Now again, a lot of you probably already know this with me, but I'm not the biggest fan of layers in most of my images. I use them very sparingly. I like to do a more painterly method with it. So if you do like to be able to backtrack a lot, feel free to use your layers, use your adjustment layers up here for color, and you could probably check out another tutorial about layers just to get yourself familiarized with them. Otherwise, you can go ahead and try the history brush method. Just make sure you have a lot of history adjustments available in your history toolbar. So now we're getting in here at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and just make a big swoop through here just to make sure our edges are pretty close. Oh, a little bit too much right there. Just backtracked one. It's okay if a teensy tiny bit of shadow gets down here. But I'm going to adjust that in just a second. So I want to make sure I don't adjust it too much right now. If any of you actually want to work with the image I'm editing right here, feel free to go to the links in the description below and you can actually purchase stock of all of my tutorials edited images so that you can practice on the actual images if you prefer. So I think we've got this pretty much covered. So now we're going to down the opacity quite a bit. Let's put it at 10% so we have a lot of control. And I'm just going to sweep along this lower edge in particular a few times just to bring that shadow back in a little bit here. And now I'm going to make the brush size a lot smaller. And I'm just going to brush along the edge of the dress right here so we can just bring a little bit of that intensified under shadow back in. Okay, I think that's good. So, we have finished working on the beach, and now we can move on to working on the model and the dress itself. So, the first place we're going to start, just to get the simple stuff done first, is let's go up to the face. So let's go Control plus, zoom in. I'm going to work on these wrinkles on the neckline. No, that looks silly right now, but we'll clean it up here in just a second. Okay, so now that I've just kind of lightly cleaned that up, let's grab some skin tone right along this edge right there with our dropper tool again and go back to our brush tool. Make this size down. Let's see. Just add a little bit of balance back in. And now we can do just a little bit of brush tool around the face. I mean, it's so far away we probably won't even see these details. But just to be perfectionist, let's go ahead and do it. There we go. Now for the mouth, you can see a little bit of yellowing in there on the teeth. Let's go ahead and find a color down closer to the tip here to clean that up. I'm going to take that color now, bring it up a bit, and then, so you see how I just did that? I took my color picker down here and I found a color close to the one I had gotten with my dropper tool and made sure that I found one slightly lighter. So I got that now. And we're going to take our paintbrush here. Just do a quick sweep. That cleans it up pretty well. I mean, that's about all we're going to need with this. Because it's going to be so far away, we're probably not even going to notice that detail. So another thing I want to do while we're zoomed in here is do some eye color quickly before we go back out to the rest of the image. So what I want to do is I want to intensify the eyebrows, eyeliner, and maybe even a little bit on the lips, just to really make the features stand out starkly when we brighten this image even more. So we're going to go here, and I'm going to click down to my burn tool, make this a lot smaller, maybe actually about eyebrow size for now. 22, let's give it a shot. I'm going to move it to mid-tones for now, and let's just brush. That's actually a little bit too strong, so let's move our exposure right here down to about 10. That'll give us a little more control. And then we're going to do the brushing again. Just kind of add that darkness in there, maybe even make it slightly smaller at the end and add a little more tip to the eyebrows. So this just kind of, if you use the midtones first, gives you a nice way to have control over cleaning up eyebrows. So there we go. That gave us a bunch more eyebrow back. Now let's just give it a shot with the shadows now. Same exposure level. Just add a little definition in there. That's much better. So now we're actually going to take our shadows and go ahead and affect our eyeliner. So if you brush along here with the same shadows, really bring those lashes in. I'm actually going to change to midtones on this because I can see some purples coming in, and a good way to avoid adding extra color in an image is to use your midtones when burning. So let's kind of just dodge those weird highlights and colors out. There we go. Do a little bit on the bottom end too. Let's go ahead and also do a little bit of shadows on the bottom sides of the eyes. Just burn these in a little bit. So now we're going to do a little bit of dodging. So let's swap over to our dodge tool. Make it way smaller. And we're just going to dodge around this, just a slight bit around the rings right here. Gives it a little more eye definition. And I'm going to go back to our burn tool again. And let's put it on midtones. Just do a little more burning. Last thing I want to do is go up and grab our dropper tool again. Grab here, and like I did before, go to your color palette after dropping a tool for the eye tone right here, and heighten it up quite a bit. Then I'm going to use that with the brush tool, and I'm going to add those whites back in. It's a little bit too bright. We need a little bit more control again, so down our opacity to 13% is fine. There we go. Back to our burn tool quickly for one little thing I noticed right here. I want to burn this in a little bit. So the last thing we can do is a little bit of cleanup on our lips here. Maybe I want to burn this edge with a little bit of midtones. Just kind of revise that color. Do a little bit of edging right here. Then I can go back in with my dodge tool and just do a slight highlight right here. So there we go. So now, if we move out, and we take a look at everything we've done to the eyes, that's quite a bit more contrast. Much more. So one more thing I think I'm going to do to the body up here before we get down here is a little bit of facial highlights, and I'm also going to darken and kind of contrast the hair a little bit just to make it stand out better. So we're going to do our burn tool first. Make it a little bigger. And let's go ahead and say shadows. And let's just move it over the hair area, particularly right here. It really makes the hair a lot more striking, really pulls the face together with the rest of the head. And now let's do a little bit of dodging. So we're in our dodge tool again, and highlights, that is perfect. And just add a little bit of sun glow up there. So there we go. One last thing I'm going to do, actually maybe that's a little bit much. Let's just add it a little closer to there. Last thing I'm going to do now is slight highlighting over the face, and I'm going to turn down this quite a bit, maybe 6. Just do it right there. So now we still have a little bit of shadow on this side of the face, which works a lot more with the lighting position. Now I would say our head retouch is done. And our next step is to go in and do a quick fix on this section right here. And this is going to be a lot more difficult, so get prepared for this. So to fix this dress section, we have to create a replica of 2 chunks on this side right here and this side right here, and move them over so that it covers up this underskirt piece right here. On the day we did this shoot, I did not have the dress petals pinned down into place, so they were opening occasionally during the shoot. So to start that, we're going to move this petal over first, and then afterwards we're going to move this petal over the top of that one. So let's get started. We can use our Polygon Lasso tool right here, and we need to make a selection. I'm going to start right here, and we just need a big indiscriminate piece of this one. So I'm just going to follow the shape pretty fluidly on this side. And now we have a chunk of our petal to work with. So what we have to do now that we have it selected is say Control C to copy it, and then say Control V to paste it. Now we have a copy of our petal. And now we have to say Control T, and now that we have this new layer right here with our petal, it's selected for transformation. So now I'm going to right click and say skew. And so now we're going to move these chunks over quite a bit, and we'll fix it afterwards. I'm going to say that's probably going to work for what we need right now. And so what we're going to do now is say enter. And now we have this big blocky shape right here. And to fix this weird edge and kind of start cleaning this stuff up, we're going to go to our eraser tool over here. Make it 40. Then we're going to just kind of brush along this edge to kind of blend it back in. You don't want to have it at 100%, and you probably don't want to have it too low either. So just kind of blending this petal in. I'd say that's probably good. Can't get too much closer. So now we've got this petal stretched over in this direction, and now we have to get this petal stretched over the top of it in this direction. So to do that, we're going to have to select this petal now. So we go back to our lasso tool and make sure that you're clicked on your background layer. You don't want to be on that first layer you just made. And make a selection of this petal. So now we have this petal selected. And we're going to do the exact same thing we did before. So we're going to say Control C, Control V, and then Control T. Then right click and say Skew. And you're going to drag these edges out. And this one's going to be trickier. Drag it so you definitely know it's going to be over the top of the other one. Let's actually try Distort. That's much better. Distort's working a lot better for this. Alright, let's see. We well lined up here. That's good right there. We're covering this edge right here. We know we're going to go over the overlap over that, and we're covered on this end, so we're good. Alright, so we're going to say Enter, and now we have to clean up this one. So the first thing you're going to want to do when cleaning up this one is move this second layer up above your first in your layer section right here. That will put it above that so that you know you're looking at what you're going to end up looking at in the end. So this layer does have a little bit of this dark edge, but to tell you the truth, I kind of like that. It adds some variety to the petals in this dress. It makes it all that much more organic feeling. And so now we're going to start cleaning this up. And there's a couple of things you're going to want to think about when cleaning up this image, or an image like this, where you just did a transformation like this. You want to clean up the edges around here so that it overlays underneath these other petals. Then you're going to need to think about your shadows. So there should be natural shadows on this end. There should be natural shadows right here. There should be natural shadows underneath the petal right here and right here. And all of those are missing right now. So we're going to have to replace all of that natural shadowing. And after that, what we'll probably do is a little bit of general shadowing around the dress to make it also feel more lively. Okay, so again, let's start with our eraser tool, and I'm actually going to go up here to opacity in my layers and churn down my opacity because I need to see where all these layers are lining up right now when we do the erasing. So as we can see now, with the opacity turned down, I have a little bit of petal sticking out right here, and I have a little bit of work I need to be careful about when I clean up over here. And then after we get close, we'll turn the opacity back up and then make those last few touch-ups that will be clean. So let's go to our eraser tool. So eraser tool selected, I need to make some very specific choices here. So we need to go up here and look at our hardness. I think my hardness should be close to 70 for this, because especially when cleaning up an edge that's that tight, I need to make sure that there is no feathering happening. After that, I need to go and check on my opacity, and it needs to be, let's say 100% at first, because we really need to get a nice, crisp, clean cleanup right here. So I'm going to turn my brush size down and then start working. And this is one thing you probably haven't seen in many of my tutorials yet, but this is a little bit more of that compositing work. And you can definitely use it to your advantage in images to really clean up and bring your images to a level that they would not be at before. There are so many problems in images you can fix using compositing. And I will probably show you some other sneaky tricks I've used in the past in future tutorials. So now this looks decently clean to me. I trust this edge now. Over here now is where we need to think about cleaning up next. I'm going to turn our opacity up here in our layers just slightly so you can get a better grasp of what that edge is going to look like. And we're going to turn our opacity of the brush down and do what we did on the other side beforehand. Oh, but another thing we should do is we should actually reduce our hardness quite a bit. We should reduce it to 0 and get a massive feather on this to really make these changes gradual. So that fixes that problem. And now let's turn our opacity up. So let's go to our layers bar over here again. Move that all the way up. Voila! Looks like we just have a few short little changes we need to make right here, but other than that, we're getting really close. There we go. That I believe. So now we have gotten our petals fixed over these edges. Everything's looking really good as far as the petals go. Our next issue is to fix those shadows we talked about. So, there's a couple of shadow areas we need to think about. I mean, if you look at this image, we see a slight shadow under all of these petals, but we don't see it over here because of those composites we just did. So, we need to think about which layer we're on when we're fixing which shadow. And to do this first shadow fix up here, we are on the right layer because it's the petal leaning over this side and we need to put the shadow on this petal layer. So let's go ahead and go to our burn tool. Let's go to highlights and let's just start with highlights on our shadowing, because even highlights are going to be darkened underneath these areas. So just adding a slight bit, maybe tone that down 1, add a little bit of mid-tone shadows in there, and then let's just darken it, give it a little contrast. That looks pretty natural to me up there now. So if you want to see what it looked like beforehand, our petal looked like that, and now it's got that natural shadow layer underneath it. Our next one is going to be on this edge, so we need to switch over to our other petal. Now we're on our other petal, we're going to go back up, switch to our highlights again, and brush under this edge. Looks like we might actually have to do a little bit on this, on the actual layer too, because I can tell that this is actually part of the natural part. Okay, so now I'm going to add a slight bit of shadow right here. Alright, let's go straight to our shadows and back up to this one and back down here. Okay, that's about as good as we're going to get that. And maybe back right here. Fix that. There we go. That's looking better now. Now you can actually see depth between these two. So if you went all the way back up to the beginning, no depth. And now we've got depth. So of course our last shadows that need to be placed are right here along these two lowest edges. And that is going to be a part of our background image. To do that, let's just go ahead and use a little bit of highlights, and then we'll do a little bit of shadows. Maybe back some of that out a little. It's a little too intense. Maybe add some midtones now. And it's okay if it just decides to place itself more heavily on certain areas, as long as it's natural. Alright. And the last areas we're going to have to place some excess shadow is along this edge. So let's go ahead up to layer 2 and just use it right along this edge. Just kind of burn in some extra shadow depth right along these petal edges. We're going to do this to all the petals in the whole image. And we'll do the same thing here. And now I am looking at this. Let's back out. I'm thinking we can put all of this together now and start working with it as one layer. So we're going to go to our layer menu, flatten image. So before we did all of this, our image looked like that. And now with all of our editing up to this point, we're looking like this. And so let's zoom in a little. And what we're going to do is just add a little bit of shadowing along these petals. Just give them a little extra depth. Make them all feel a little special. I'm going to just heighten their creases. Add some new ones. Just kind of make them feel really crisp. It'll make these petals feel more natural too. I'm going to do a little bit burning right along these edges. Go back up to shadows. Don't want to leave any petals feeling unspecial. Okay, so zoom out. Now I would say we have all of our petals taken care of. Now there's one last thing I'm going to do before we go in and do our final work on color. And that is we're going to do some volumizing on the dress here to really bump it out and make it feel like a really bushy rose. So let's go to filters up here at the top and go to liquify right here. So now we're in liquify and we've got this warp tool selected, and what it'll do is it'll allow us to just drag the dress volume and just move it around and just kind of reshape it. It's really fun. I love doing this. So I know some people out there would be like, that's cheating, but whatever you're going for in your image, I mean, it's no different than painting or drawing or anything else. Go and do what you want with your images. And so now, as you can see, I'm just using this tool to reshape this bell shape of the dress, and it really helps give it new volume. I can also use it to kind of drag these petal pieces around if I want to, and kind of make them lift off a little bit. Kind of reshape where the petals are. There we go. Last thing, might just kind of bump the shoulder bump down a little bit. Looks a little better. And now we'll say OK. Boom! Look at that. So we went from there to there with our dress. And as you can tell, that just makes a huge difference to how it looks. The last thing I'm going to do before I do color work is just a quick little brush around these edges with my history brush before the liquify tool, just to make sure nothing's too warped in our background, because that'll help sell the warp of the dress a lot more. So we just brush around, make sure things are feeling fairly natural. Our hardness can even get turned down a little bit, make it really soft. We can turn that up quite a bit. There we go. So we are ready to do our color work now. Yay! First thing we're going to do is go up to Image, Adjustments, and let's go down to Selective Color. And so right now we're starting in the reds, right here. And as you can see, we can affect the cyans, magentas, or yellows in the reds, and that means cyans versus reds, magentas versus greens, yellows versus blues, and blacks versus whites. So let's just move these things around a little bit and see what we get. If I wanted to add and make this rose feel really flush and more kind of a deep blood red, I could up my yellows a little bit. If I wanted to give it more of a fuchsia feel, I could add in more magenta. And just add a little bit of each of those. Go ahead and down that a little bit. Right there, so feels good to me. And now in our yellows, we can up our yellows a little bit, which will help the greens right here in the image. Also down there overall just a little bit. And now with our greens, there might not actually be that much green in here. Believe it or not, what we see as green in many images is actually mostly yellows. So if you're planning to adjust these brighter green colors like this, or even some of these, you're more likely to be working in the yellows than the greens. So that's good. We're not going to really mess too much with that. Cyans, let's see what we have here. Not really seeing much cyan. Other than that, let's just go straight down to our neutral tones down here. So let's start with white. I'm going to mess with that quite a bit. So make this image feel a lot warmer. Go to our neutrals. Tone that down just a little bit. Go to our blacks. Put a little bit of blue into our blacks to soften them. And then add magenta. And that hardens it a little. So, before we got into selective color, our image looked like this. And now our image looks like this. Let's click OK. And now, just to get a good look at what our finalized image looked like the first time, I'm going to go ahead and take a quick peek at it. So we're getting really, really close to what we looked like in the end here. If you look here, this is what our final image looked like the first time. This is what we have right now. Now one thing I notice is we could do a little bit of work on our brightness. Let's just tone our brightness down a tad like that. I think that's a little closer to what it was the first time. Our contrast, that's fine. Add a little bit of extra contrast. So now we're looking more like that. That looks a little more under control to me now. And in our adjustments, let's go down to Hue and Saturation. So now in Hue and Saturation, we can really have fun adjusting the brightness of our tones here. If we wanted to have really bright petals, we could. Just add a little extra. Just adds a tiny bit, but it's good. You'll see it more on your screen if you play. After that, I think the only thing I'm going to do left for color is color balance. So open color balance, and in this tool you get to work with your shadows, midtones, and highlights, and you get to affect what colors are enhanced within those. And the special thing about color balance is while you are affecting your highlights, shadows, and midtones, whichever one you have selected will get slightly enhanced. And that can be a good or bad thing, depending on what you're working on. So if we take a look here and I click on highlights and I up my yellows, it actually brightens my image while adding yellows. So that can be something you may or may not want in your image. I'm happy just adding a tad bit more yellow to the highlights. I'll go to the shadows. Add a tad bit of blue. Midtones. I'm actually going to add a little bit of blue to the midtones too. I think that just kind of gives it a nice feeling. There we go. So if we could preview, we started here, and now we're here. Now if we go ahead and look at our past image, and we make it the same size, it's a little different this time. Our past image was a lot more of the yellows, and I'm okay with this though. Maybe I'll just go up here one last time. Quick adjustment to our neutrals, and add a little bit more yellow into it. Okay, I think I am happy with this image. So our image started out of raw like this. This is what we selected for in our raw imaging. And our image now looks like this. I hope you guys have a ton of fun with this, and I cannot wait to see the things you guys are producing with this. And like I said earlier, if you guys end up making some images with this that you would like me to share with everyone else on the channel and give you a shout out, please send those in to me and I will definitely consider them for future vlogs and get your name out there for you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!